Okay, so you sent over some really cool stuff about this new music production place in Nashville.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
you were especially interested in these like gravity walls
Right.
that were like a really big part of how they built the whole thing.
Yeah.
We've got all the info here.
It wasn't just like some little studio they put up. This was
Yeah.
like a huge
Yeah.
55-acre development.
Wow.
Yeah, they had everything, a stadium rehearsal space, an amphitheater, and then obviously the recording studios.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and these retaining walls seem like they were super important from the very beginning to like
Right.
make the most of all that land.
Exactly. So that's kind of our mission for today's deep dive, is to figure out why these walls were so important, how they actually work, and what this impressive performance thing
Right.
really means for a project like this.
Yeah.
You mentioned wanting to like get the core knowledge without being overwhelmed.
Right.
So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to
Right.
focus on how they like really squeezed every inch of use out of this property.
Yeah, and that's what's so cool about this whole thing.
Right.
How do you take like a big piece of land and actually unlock all of its potential for such a complex development?
Yeah,
This project in Nashville is like a perfect example of that.
it is.
And they did it through some really smart engineering.
Yeah. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture.
Okay.
The overall project and why they even needed these walls in the first place.
Right.
Like we said, it's a big development
Yeah.
in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And what really jumps out is just the size of these walls.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking 2 MagnumStone reinforced gravity retaining walls,
Okay.
totaling over 21,000 square feet.
Wow.
That's a lot of wall.
It is a lot.
To give you a sense of that, the bigger one is 1,000 feet long and gets up to 20 feet high.
Wow. So it's like 3 football fields long.
Yeah.
And as tall as a 2-story building.
Exactly.
Wow. That means they must have had to deal with some pretty big changes in elevation across the property.
Totally. And it wasn't just about keeping the hillside from like collapsing, you know?
Right.
The document says they were super important for managing stormwater
Yeah, that makes sense.
and preventing erosion.
Especially in Nashville, they get a lot of rain.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, they wanted the natural stone look
Oh, right.
to be part of the whole modern design.
Yeah.
So they had to make sure these walls were functional,
Mm-hmm.
but also looked good.
Right. They weren't just like a practical thing.
Yeah.
They were a big part of the whole architectural plan.
Yeah,
It's cool how sometimes infrastructure can be useful and look awesome.
totally. Okay, so let's dive into how these walls actually helped them maximize space on the property,
Okay.
because that seems to be like a major reason why they went with this type of construction.
Right.
Each wall had a specific job to do in creating more usable land. Not just for the main buildings, but for all the stuff that goes with a facility this size.
Right, like roads and parking and stuff.
Exactly. And what's interesting is how this like precast modular block system made all that possible.
Yeah, it's not like those old poured concrete walls,
Right.
which can be a pain to build.
Yeah.
This modular design is way more compact and secure.
And they got the blocks from Lee Building Products.
Oh, cool. So they were locally sourced.
Yeah, which is good for transportation and the local economy.
Yeah, totally. And how quick the installation was.
Yeah, time is money in any construction project.
For sure.
And they found a way to speed things up without sacrificing quality.
Yeah, how they do that with this modular system?
Well, basically, the blocks are like giant pre-made Lego pieces.
Okay.
So they fit together really easily.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they need way less on-site labor.
Oh, I see.
And the whole thing goes up much faster.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But let's be real, building walls this big and complicated isn't going to be a walk in the park. Right.
We're talking crazy lengths, heights, corners, and then there's the whole stormwater thing we talked about.
Yeah, and the main goal was to protect and expand the amount of land they could actually build on.
Right.
It's like taking a sloping piece of land and making it flat
Right.
so they can build stuff on it.
Yeah, without those walls, a big chunk of that 55 acres would have been useless.
Right, too steep or unstable.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
These gravity extender units.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering about those.
They're like the secret sauce
Oh.
to how these walls did so well.
So what are they?
They're basically these interlocking pieces
Mhm.
that work with the main blocks,
Okay.
and they extend back into the soil,
Right.
and they use the weight of the blocks to make the whole thing super stable.
Go back.
And the best part is they needed way less digging than with traditional walls.
Less digging, that's always good.
Way less. And it was
Huh.
super important in this case because
What was the problem? They ran into some really tough bedrock.
bedrock is a nightmare to dig through.
It is. It costs a ton of money and takes forever.
Yeah.
So by using these extenders, they saved a ton of time and money.
Right.
And most importantly, they didn't have to waste space on underground reinforcements.
Right.
And the hollow core blocks themselves were more than just about making the wall strong.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, they also helped with water management.
Oh, right, because of the holes.
Exactly. The water can flow right through,
Mm-hmm.
which stops pressure from building up behind the wall.
That makes sense.
That can happen when water gets trapped, and it can actually wreck the wall.
Mm,
So having that drainage built in is what makes these walls last so long.
I see.
Plus, these walls also help protect nearby wetlands from erosion
Okay.
and manage runoff from other properties.
So they're good for the environment, too.
Exactly. It's like they're doing a million things at once.
Multitasking walls.
Right. And they even say this whole system is like a budget-friendly way to get the most out of the land.
It sounds like they really knew what they were doing.
They did, and especially when you think about all the crazy storms Nashville's been getting lately.
Yeah, 100-year storms seem to be happening way more often.
So making sure these walls could handle all that rain was super important.
Totally. Okay, so let's talk about those stormwater management features.
Okay, so they built this big swale above the biggest wall.
A swale? What's that?
It's basically like a shallow ditch
Oh, okay.
that's designed to slow down rainwater.
I see.
So by making the swale, they're controlling how fast the water flows toward the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and that helps prevent erosion
Makes sense.
and gives the ground more time to soak up the water.
It's simple but effective.
Totally. And remember those gravel-filled hollow cores we were talking about?
Yeah.
They actually help with drainage, too.
Really? How?
The gravel acts like a filter. So water can pass through, but it traps any dirt or debris,
Okay.
and it creates a clear path for the water to drain away.
Smart.
So there's no pressure building up behind the wall.
That's all connected.
It is okay. Now, the second wall, which is next to the wetlands near Ewing Creek,
Yeah.
that one's a little different.
How so?
It acts like a detention pond.
What does that mean?
Basically, it means the wall has to be able to handle changes in the water level of the creek.
Okay.
And the concrete blocks they used are really good at that.
Why?
They don't absorb much water.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so they don't erode when the water level rises.
That makes sense.
It's important for protecting the buildings nearby.
Right.
It's a different way of managing water compared to the swale,
Mm.
but just as important.
Right. Okay, so what about that 40% thing you mentioned earlier?
Oh, yeah. So the engineering firm, Blue Rock Engineering and Testing,
Mm.
they were able to achieve a really low base to height ratio. Basically, it tells you how much space the wall needs at the bottom
Okay.
to support how tall it is.
Mm-hmm.
A lower ratio means they need less space.
Oh, okay.
So by getting to 40% instead of the usual 60%,
Right.
they saved a ton of space behind the wall.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, and they used that extra space for parking roads and even to put buildings closer to the property line.
So it all comes back to maximizing space.
Exactly. Okay, so now let's talk about how they actually put these walls up.
Okay.
Because building something this massive had to be a huge undertaking,
Yeah,
and really emphasizes how easy it was to install these walls.
which probably saved them a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, for sure, because the blocks are modular and they can be moved around with regular construction equipment.
Right.
They didn't need a ton of manual labor.
Oh, that's a big cost saver.
Huge. And it meant the whole thing went up much faster.
Gotcha. And the installation was done by JP Yardwright.
Yeah, they followed the designs from Blue Rock Engineering and Testing.
It's so important to have skilled people working on something like this.
Totally. Even the best design won't work if it's not built right.
Exactly.
And it sounds like JPR did a great job.
Paying attention to all the details.
Exactly.
And they were able to build closer to the property lines because of that, too.
Right.
So they really maximized the space they had.
And they even put a fence right into the top of one of the walls.
Yeah, that's another cool detail.
How'd they do that?
They used the hollow cores to anchor the fence posts.
That's awesome.
It's a small thing, but it all adds up.
And they used cut and fill techniques.
It's a way of moving dirt around
Okay.
to make the ground level.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably dug into the slope for the taller wall. It's all about making the most of the existing landscape.
That makes sense. Okay, now let's talk about how these walls look.
Okay?
Because they weren't just about function.
Right.
They're also part of the overall design of the music campus.
Right, they had that natural stone look.
Exactly. And it was a conscious choice.
It seems like they really cared about the aesthetics.
They did, and they used different block sizes to get the look they wanted.
So it wasn't just the standard size.
Nope. They also used half-high and half-wide blocks.
Why different sizes?
Well, the half-high blocks helped create a smoother transition at the top of the wall.
Right.
So it blends in better with the natural surroundings.
I see.
And they used the half-wide blocks and corner units to give the walls a nice clean finish.
So it looks more polished.
Exactly, and it made it easier to put in the fence posts too.
Right, it all works together.
It does. Okay, so let's wrap up by talking about why these walls were so impressive.
Yeah.
The MagnumStone system was the perfect choice for maximizing space.
Right, that was their main goal.
Exactly, and these walls are doing way more than just holding back dirt.
Yeah, they're supporting important infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And they're built to handle some pretty intense weather.
Yeah, especially with all those big storms lately.
Right, they're really thinking ahead.
And those gravity extenders were a game changer.
They save so much time and money on digging.
Exactly, and they help protect the environment too.
Yeah, by reducing the amount of land they had to disturb.
Right, and the hollow core blocks were amazing.
Yeah, they helped with drainage and prevented erosion.
Totally, they were like the unsung heroes of the project.
It's crazy how much thought went into something that most people would never even notice.
I know, but those walls were essential.
They really were.
They made the whole project possible.
So what can we learn from this?
Well, I think it shows how important smart engineering is. Yeah.
Especially when you're working with limited space.
Mm-hmm.
And these retaining walls weren't just functional.
Right, they were also beautiful.
Exactly. They were part of the overall design.
It's inspiring to see a project that blends form and function so well.
Totally. And it makes you think about other ways we could be using these kinds of solutions.
Yeah, like in our own communities, maybe.
Exactly, to make the most of the space we have.
And to build things that are both useful and beautiful.
Right. So what stood out to you the most about this project?
Honestly, I was blown away by how much thought went into these walls.
We too.
They weren't just an afterthought.
Right.
They were a crucial part of the whole plan.
Exactly. It's a great example of how sometimes the most important innovations are the ones you don't even see.
Yeah, like the foundation of a house. You don't see it, but it's what holds everything up.
Totally.
And that's what these gravity walls did for this project.
They were the foundation for everything.
And they did it beautifully.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think we nailed it.
We did great job.
Back at you.
Thanks for joining me today.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was great having you.
Likewise.
And for everyone listening, we'll catch you next time
See ya.
for another deep dive.
Bye.